Thank you guys all for joining us today. This is the General Operating Support 2026-2027 Grant Recipient Workshop. We are going to start with our land acknowledgement. To begin today, we acknowledge that the place that we call Cuyahoga County is land that was claimed by the United States government through force, displacement, and treaties negotiated in bad faith. We acknowledge those of the Shawnee, Miami, Erie, Ottawa, Potawatomi, and Haudenosaunee confederacies, whose lands we stand on, and the thousands of Native Americans representing over 100 tribes who currently live in Northeast Ohio today. And we want to thank the Lake Erie Native American Council for helping us develop this acknowledgement. Sorry, my dog's going to bark in the background. We'd also like to take a moment to lift up our value of equity. We choose to lead with racial equity in our work because the creation and perpetuation of racial inequalities is embedded into government and grant making. We confront the white supremacy that resides in our work because racial inequities across all indicators of success are deep and pervasive. We also recognize the power and potential that organizations who produce arts and cultural programming have as bearers of culture. These institutions have the power to write the narrative about who belongs and who is valued. We encourage arts organizations to connect with resources to advance equity in your own work. You can visit cacgrants.org/equity or contact a member of the grant team to learn more. Our goal today is to launch the 2026 General Operating Support Grant and to set you, our grantees, up for a successful grant year. We'll briefly introduce CAC and the General Operating Support Grant. We'll talk through the reporting calendar and grant year requirements. And finally, we'll hold time for folks to ask questions. If you have questions about the content of the presentation, please feel free to raise your hand or drop them in the chat so we can address them when they come up. I also want to note that today's presentation is being recorded, and we will be sharing the presentation and recording with you in a follow-up email, which will include the resources we share with you today. And lastly, please note that this workshop is intended for grantees with awards over $20,000. Some of the information we'll cover won't apply to organizations that receive less than $20,000. So if your organization's award is under $20,000, please reach out to your grant manager. We can share materials from yesterday's workshop for general operating support grants under $20,000. Cuyahoga Arts and Culture is the public funder for arts and culture organizations in Cuyahoga County and has invested more than $270 million in more than 500 organizations since 2007. Cuyahoga County residents created Cuyahoga Arts and Culture in 2006 when they approved a tax on cigarettes to support arts and culture in our community. This levy was renewed in 2015 and expanded in 2024 and now runs through 2035. Our mission is to inspire and strengthen the community by investing in arts and culture. And to do that, we make grants to 501c3 arts and culture organizations and projects in Cuyahoga County. In 2026, CAC is investing almost $12.9 million through grants to more than 300 organizations who bring arts and culture to life in our community. I want to quickly take a moment to introduce our grant making team. My name is Maya, and I'm a grants manager here at CAC. Also joining us today are my fellow grant managers, Davon Nichols and Eric Hoffman, as well as our Director of Grant Making, Strategy and Communications, Jake Sinatra, and our Communications Manager, Laura Mormino. Please feel free to contact us if you have any questions about your General Operating Support Awards. We are here to help. We can help you find materials you need, which could be old applications or reports, offer guidance around completing requirements. We will surely be sending you reminders throughout the year and can help make connections between organizations. And now I will hand it off to Eric.
Thanks, Maya. The goal of the General Operating Support Program is to strengthen the community by deepening its access to arts and culture through meaningful, multi-year core support to arts and cultural organizations based in and serving Cuyahoga County. The vast majority of CAC funds go towards general operating support. In 2026, that's 11.4 of our $12.9 million core grant-making budget. There are 152 grantees in our general operating support pool, and 71 organizations received awards over $20,000. The General Operating Support Program includes organizations of all sizes who serve residents from every zip code across Cuyahoga County. The funding criteria are characteristics that all General Operating Support grantees are expected to demonstrate. CAC's 3 funding criteria across all our grant programs are public benefit, which is an organization's ability to meaningfully connect with its community to achieve its mission; artistic and cultural vibrancy, an organization's ability to create relevant and engaging work that furthers its mission; and organizational capacity, an organization's ability to successfully plan for and manage its resources. As we start the grant year, we recommend that grantees review the full definitions of the funding criteria. They can be found on page 8 of the guidelines, which we'll share a link to at the end of this workshop. All general operating support grantees are expected to show evidence of the funding criteria through reporting, which we'll also review and get to shortly. So a couple of examples from past grantees that demonstrated these practices include things like, for public benefit, some grantees focused on diversifying and expanding their audiences. For artistic and cultural vibrancy, some focused on enhancing their programming and building collaborative partnerships with the community. And for organizational capacity, some focused on developing their board and creating systems to improve the workplace for their staff. We have more examples listed in the General Operating Support Guidelines. However, there are many organizations in this group, and they have many different goals, so don't feel limited to the examples listed. Instead, they should be inspiration for topics to reflect on if you're having trouble expressing your organization's alignment with our funding criteria. Next, we want to talk about belonging. The concept of belonging intersects our funding criteria and is a value that CAC holds close, in particular around public benefit, the first and most emphasized of our funding criteria. We define this and several other important terms in our glossary, which is linked in the guidelines and will be shared at the end of the presentation. The glossary defines words like diverse, sharing power, community, and others. But back to belonging. Belonging is about an unwavering commitment to not simply tolerating and respecting differences, but ensuring that all people are welcome and feel that they belong in a given space. This graphic, which comes from John A. Powell and the Othering and Belonging Institute, is a great example of that. Belonging is not just about inviting people into the circle, but expanding it and bringing more chairs in. It's about bridging between differences rather than requiring people to change or integrate. It's about co-creating and co-owning. In organizations and institutions, this concept should be present at all levels, not just in an education or outreach departments, but especially in leadership, where power is held. Belonging and practice will look different at every organization, but it will not include tokenizing people of color, extractive partnerships with smaller organizations, or outreach programs into communities where there is no trusting relationships built. I found these materials from the Othering and Belonging Institute to be super practical, understandable, and very helpful in my work, and we'll share a link to their materials at the end as well. Now we're going to talk about the requirements you'll have to complete throughout the grant year. This calendar of requirements will help you plan for report deadlines and when you can expect your grant payments. To receive the first 50% of your grant, you must do the following 3 things. First, complete all 2025 reporting requirements. Whether you're a returning general operating support grantee or coming from another program, you must complete all previous reporting requirements to be in good standing for your new 2026 grant. Secondly, you must sign your grant agreement for 2026. Hopefully, your executive director and board chair have done this already. And thirdly, you must have completed your 2026 organizational goals form, which is due by January 31st. At mid-year, grantees will share an update on progress toward the goals they set at the beginning of the year. Approval of the mid-year report will cue the second payment of 40% of your grant. Mid-year reports are due by July 31st. At year end, you'll submit another update on your progress toward the goals, queuing the final 10% of your grant. This year-end report will be due by January 31st, 2027. All organizations at year-end will be asked to submit a program location report, as well as a reconciliation of what the CAC grant funds went towards. I encourage all new grantees or new grant managers in particular to take a look at the current 2025 year-end report and make a plan to track and collect the data requested here so that next year you're ready to go. We have these instructions linked in the PowerPoint that we'll share, and you can also find it as a PDF on the current grantees page of our website. Now, depending on your fiscal year end date, all grantees will submit information once a year. This includes your audit or review, an earned revenue and support form, and the cultural data profile funders report based on your audited or reviewed financials. So organizations with fiscal year ending between January and July will submit their 2026 financials with the 2026 year-end report. And organizations with their funding year ending between August and December will submit their 2025 financials with the mid-year report this summer. So we're going to pause here for a moment to see if there are any questions about these requirements or anything else we've talked about so far. Okay. We will also take questions at the end, so feel free to, if questions pop up, definitely let us know before the workshop ends. So the final 2 requirements are related to event sharing and crediting CAC in your public programming. Laura will review these requirements in the next 2 slides.
Thanks, Eric. All CAC grantees are required to acknowledge CAC funding in their publicly funded arts and culture programming. By sharing with audiences that your organization is funded by the residents of Cuyahoga County through CAC, you're showing what public funding for the arts can do in real time. Your publicity for your grant is an important advocacy tool to help champion public funding. You can do this in many ways. In your programs or website, via pre-show announcement, in your marketing emails, or on venue or exhibit signage. Our communications toolkit can be found on our website and is linked at the end of this presentation. Here you can find CAC's logo, our suite of ads and social media graphics, and a number of other tools to help you fulfill this requirement. All grant recipients are also required to post your public programming on clevelandartsevents.com. A public programming component is required to receive grant funding in general operating support. Posting to clevelandartsevents.com is your public notice to CAC that your programming is happening and has an added benefit of reaching the residents of Cuyahoga County. This site is a managed events calendar of arts and culture events happening in the greater Cleveland area. It's visited by thousands of Cuyahoga County residents each month and is a great opportunity to reach a wider audience. By posting your events on this community calendar, you are not only meeting the terms of your grant agreement, but you are demonstrating public benefit and connecting with county residents. All GOS grantees are required to post an event on clevelandartsevents.com in each month of 2026 that you have public programming. So if you hold classes, programs, or events throughout the year, there should be at least 12 events on the site by the end of the year. Be sure to get your event listed at least 30 days ahead of your program so that it has enough time for residents to see it. Our events newsletter reaches about 10,000 subscribers twice a month, so definitely take advantage of that included promotion. All grantee organizations have profiles created already on the site. If you have issues accessing your account or need assistance with crediting materials, we are here to help. We have a handout we'll share specifically on how to meet these two requirements listed with this PowerPoint. And now I will hand it over to Devon to talk about the organizational goal setting form. Oops.
Thank you, Laura. So the reporting requirement that I'd like to take a moment to talk about is the 2026 organizational goals form. Since this is a report that's due January 31st, it might be on your to-do list. The goals you share in this first requirement will reference the remainder of your reporting for the grant year. With such a diverse cohort of grantees, we ask organizations to define success for themselves through your self-defined goals. Here are some tips for completing this form. 1, your goals should connect to the funding criteria. With organizations not being required to reapply each year, this is your opportunity to show that your organization's mission-driven work is relevant to CAC's funding criteria and worthy of public funding. You should set a goal for public benefit, artistic and cultural vibrancy, and organizational capacity. We also encourage grantees to set a racial equity goal, as we have done for at least the last several years. But this year it is optional. For the next thing, we encourage you to submit goals that are drawn from your organization's strategic plan or other organization-wide planning frameworks. Of course, please submit goals that your organization anticipates working on this year, though, so that you will be able to report back on your progress. The idea here is that you shouldn't be making new CAC-specific work goals, but rather showing how the mission-driven work you do already ties to CAC's goals, the funding criteria. And third, make sure your goals are SMARTY. Most of you have heard of the SMART goals: specific, measurable, ambitious, realistic, time-bound, but SMARTY goals are also inclusive and equitable. The concept of SMARTY goals comes from the Management Center, which has a worksheet with tips that we'll give you guys at the end of the workshop as well. The 2026 goals and the 2025 year-end report for any returning grantees is due January 31st. So the general operating support grants are for spending as your organization needs on general operating expenses, but there are a specific list of things that CAC does not fund or the funds cannot go towards, including programs outside the county, raising or fundraising or public benefits, regranting, travel outside of the US, and other things that you can see through our guidelines. Grantees must maintain eligibility with CAC to receive their grant. This includes meeting all eligibility requirements listed in the guidelines. So, for example, existing as a 501c3 organization based in Cuyahoga County, having an active board of at least 3 directors, an annual audit or review requirements, and others which can be found directly in the guidelines. The list shown here is not comprehensive, but funding restrictions and eligibility requirements are listed comprehensively in the guidelines and in your grant agreement. So please be sure to review them carefully. And speaking on the topic of the grant agreement, we just wanted to highlight and remind everyone of a few things. If you haven't done so, please review your grant agreement to be sure to revisit it if you have any questions or concerns about your grant. In the grant agreement, you'll find information on what to do if any material changes happen to your programming, like board of directors or key staff changes, what could happen if the grant agreement is breached. CAC has the right to audit and evaluate programs and more. It's important that you and your organization understands your grant agreement. So please remember that you can always reach out to any of your grant manager as things come up throughout the year. We can help you stay in good standing with your CAC grant. And that's pretty much it. So thanks for sticking with us. At the end of the slideshow, which we'll share via email, We will have a list of all the links and resources that we've mentioned, but I also want to take a moment to orient you to finding the key materials on your own as needed. The 2026-27 General Operating Support Guidelines is where you'll find a list of eligibility requirements, funding restrictions, and reporting details. The actual report forms are found in our online application and reporting system, smapply.org. Many handouts are linked in the glossary of the guidelines, which includes definitions of many terms we use for our funding criteria. All of these things can be found on our website at cacgrants.com. Finally, if handouts and visuals aren't the best mode for learning exchange, your grant manager, myself, Maya, or Eric are always ready to help. We'll answer your phones and reply to emails promptly. So reach out if you have any questions.